Hello. Welcome to more painting of Christmas cards, because this never ends, apparently, which is great. This apparently never ends. This is I'd say this is like day 6 of really seriously painting Christmas cards, which is great. I think tomorrow is going to be the first day of cutting down card blanks or card panels into individual cards, because I realized that I don't actually have an accurate count of what I've done, which is making it a bit hard because I think I've got enough card blanks, but I don't actually know. So I think tomorrow, once everything's fully dry, we'll cut down the first several panels and see how that goes. A little bit high today. Just a little better. Yes. Hello. I do. What color did I leave off on? I left off here. So, we are now alternating, question mark, the colors as we go. I am awful at sketching. I almost never sketch. It's not my thing. So, I just don't sketch. But I do like painting. I would say I do maybe two to three commissions that involve sketching a year. Other than that, I don't sketch. I don't find it relaxing. I don't enjoy it. So I've already done an entire sheet of trees today and filmed Saturday's video because I realized that people needed a little bit of an explanation because I keep talking about Scriptus, but I made it pretty clear last year that I wasn't going back to Scriptus, so I realized that I should probably put out a video that talked about how we got to this point that I'm actually going back this year. Because I am attending again, and that means that I've got less time to do these because we're going to be away next weekend. So let's grab, oh nice. This is a very brief section that things are all in line again. I think, maybe. Let's grab this. But the plan is tomorrow we're going to cut down panels, and then I'll have a better idea of how many cards I've actually done. Because I've given up on gift tags. They just don't make enough. So these are trees that I then cut down into panels that are about this size. They're a little bit smaller than that. And they get mounted on the front of Christmas cards. So they work pretty well. So I'm sort of just like going with the colors I feel like. I pulled from my studio palette, and so all of these colors have quite a lot of dimension to them. They granulate, and so I've got a pretty fun palette for them, which also makes them look fun for Christmas cards. I should have kept one of last year's because I've got the color palette of last year in my reference book, but I don't actually have a card from last year. Thank you. So that means that next. 1, 2, 3, yes. Blueberries next. Which is also quite a fun color. It's a newer color from Cosmic Creations. And it's just this sort of like fun purpley gray from Laura. And it's actually one of the colors in my palette for teaching workshops. I've got a whole bunch of pans of it for when I teach. I want that a little bit wider. The one thing about this is that it's like a constant cleaning of a palette. What's next? I also always wonder if this will be the stream where I finally get super chats or super stickers, which has never happened. I've been streaming on YouTube for 2 years at this point, almost 2 years. It's never happened. That's almost 2 years. So. It's always like this first row getting back into it. That's always awkward. And the funny thing is, I did 5 rows this morning. Like, I haven't had a huge break. I took a break to have lunch and send a couple emails for work. And now it's like a huge struggle to get back into it. And really, I've only taken maybe 2 hours off. What's next? Oh, ooh, ooh, ooh. We're here. The fun of it's for a while, like it was just like straight lines on the palette, and now everything's offset. And it is so much harder to do this when the whole palette's offset. So it's slightly harder to keep track. I should have just kept going earlier, but there were some emails that had to be sent before the end of the day. So instead I took a break, and now I can't keep track of what colors I've used and what I haven't. Brown, which means we're on the last green, and then we get to loop back around to greens. All right, there's my little detail brush. There it is. On occasion, you get slightly awkward ones like this, where it's like, what's happened has happened. I'm not sure how to fix it without making it worse, and so we're just gonna live with it. All right. This is a very like purple. Let's All right, we're gonna accept that it's wonky, but we might go over it again once all said and done. It's such a huge contrast compared to the muted stuff. Actually, I like that. There's something fun about the contrast of the really pale. Is each one a different session? No. So it's, I would describe it as whatever color palette I feel like. Because I've pulled such a small percentage of my overall palette. Really, I'm just using whatever I feel like that fits sort of the theme. But I'm also trying not to get bored. So right now I'm working through the palette in a really sort of unique way and currently alternating colors by row. And so just going row by row picking colors, which is not how I'd normally paint. But I've done one where I went in palette order. And so I thought it was time to try something different. And this is the wrong paintbrush. Because I have the same paintbrush in a 2 and in 6. What I want is the 6 because it just puts down a bit more water. And I'm going to have to re-wet this anyways, but I'd rather do the base in something really wet. So we are back to the beginning of this palette. With whatever this color is. This really pretty sort of pale violet. I am excited to see. I'm both excited and concerned. I'm worried that I don't have as many card panels as I think I do. But I'm also, I think I might have more than I think I do. Like part of my brain's going, like, you know how many each sheet gets cut down into if they get cut correctly. And so we'll see how many I end up getting. Theoretically, I'll get, out of each sheet like this, I think I get 16. I think. And out of the slightly bigger sheets, I get 18. So we'll see what I end up actually getting once we start to cut them down. Because you don't always get the exact number you think you're going to get, because if you screw up a cut line, things happen. Brown, so Scarlet Mist is up next, which I would say Scarlet Mist is like a very pale red. People are being quiet today in the chat. There are people watching, but no one chatting, which is, you know, meaning that I have to entertain myself while I paint a bazillion trees again. But I appreciate you watching the ads. My being able to afford paper fund is continuing to grow, so I appreciate it greatly. Because once I get through all of these, I am going to have made a serious dent in paper, and there are so many fountain pen videos coming out in the next couple weeks that I've made a huge dent in my paper stash. Yes, we are doing elevated trees today. Mostly because I know these were the most popular last year. And so as annoying as they are to paint, we're pushing through and we're painting them. I get bored. And so to live we go, because I'd rather be bored with people to entertain me on live than just be bored. And I think they look fun. I'm switching up the color palette so that I get less bored. I'm currently going row by row and working through it like one, but the rows aren't even, so like I'm no longer it's become very confusing because we're about to go back to light green, but we've still got a purple. Apparently the purple's the longest row. And we've already gone back. We've already gone back to the beginning of something. So like it's become incredibly confusing. I no longer know where I am in this palette, but I'm having a good time. And honestly, that's what's important when you're doing a massive project like this. Like if I can keep myself entertained. I've only just started streaming, but I'm on hour 5:30 now. I've already done probably 3 hours of painting today. So, of painting trees and painting card blanks. So at this point, it's like, what can I do to keep my brain entertained through the process? Yep. It's just like, keep everything moving forward. And sometimes like we're getting some weird color combinations side by side, because I'm no longer, the first one I was so methodical about making sure everything side by side worked. The reality is that takes too much time and too much brain energy, and it was so time consuming. And overall, this new system of, you know, working through the palette however I feel like seems to actually work fairly well. So we're just sticking with it. The reality is like this isn't, there are so many more tedious jobs, but it's one of those jobs that just like the longer I spend doing it, the more tedious it gets. And so for the first couple days of doing it, it's not bad. But I have now been doing this on and off for 4 weeks. And we are now in crunch time because according to what I put up on Instagram today, I have 16 days until I am selling product. And so I need to actually be in crunch time and working on this properly. So hopefully the combination of streaming and everything will have my brain in a state that, I can stay focused, because I just get bored. Honestly, the first couple weeks of it are fine, but we're in week 4 now and I'm bored. And so we are now painting trees live, but tomorrow the plan is to cut down the panels. Or Friday. Today's Wednesday. Because I need to actually have some better idea of numbers. Because having a sheet that gives me theoretical numbers is all well and good, but if I screw up cutting something out, those numbers can change really fast for how many cards I think I have. So I need a clearer idea of numbers so that I know what I'm working on for the next 2 weeks. Because I'm gonna lose a couple days to Scriptus. And then I really want to be done by the Thursday before the show, because the show's on a Saturday morning. And we have to be set up by 9 a.m. So. And I'm saying that, but I also know that come the Friday night, I'm still going to be doing stuff. Huh. I'm always interested to know what the ad, sometimes the ad revenue on a video is crazy for what seems to be a video that's not doing super well. Oh, we're here. Okay. Also, we've upgraded today, and I've now got 6 palettes out, which is ridiculous. I'm going to hate myself in a couple weeks when I actually decide to clean ceramic palettes, because I've got one here, I've got one that has paints on it, I've got one that I was using for the rainbow ball, for the sparkly glass balls, I've got one that I was using for the matte ones, and there's another one. There are 2 more, actually. So I'm up to 6 now. And so I have a feeling that by the time we get to the beginning of November, I'm going to have most of my ceramic palettes out, which is really funny. Most of the palettes I've got out currently are not my actual palettes. They're palettes that I have for teaching classes. But because they're for teaching classes, they're slightly bigger than my normal palettes. And so I normally don't have them on my desk because they're impractical when I'm working normally. And I've decided I don't care, because they just give me a little bit of extra space. Also, I'm still undecided if I'm adding shimmer to all of these. But I sort of need to decide, because we're supposed to have 2 warm days and then it's supposed to be back to below freezing. So I need to make the decision, because if I'm going to make them shimmery, I'm going to do it outside, where I don't have to worry about getting glitter all over or mica powder all over the studio. But I need to make that decision in the next few. I guess I need to make it before I cut the sheet. Because the shimmery ones are fun, they're just not... I don't know. I like them, and people like them, but they're just... I don't know. We'll see. I also cleaned this brush just before we filmed, and it's already back to being stained purple honestly. Oh, that's gonna be a fun color combination, like the dark green. What I like is that dark green's actually an aqua, and for whatever reason, it's currently dark green. And then we're back to gray. I like the purple too, with the copper. Like, it's just, there's something, really, I started doing this because I was bored, and I needed a new variation, was really what was going on. I needed something new. I just needed a change. And the change happened to be like working through this palette in a really odd way. But it's ended up with some really fun combinations. Like this is a really fun gray from Rosa Gallery. And so I think my goal is to do at least, this will be sheet 3 of trees. I think my goal is to do 4 sheets of trees, which I think is going to be too many. But I would rather have too many and have some to sell on Instagram than not have enough. Because I fear not having enough. I also fear not selling anything, because normally I sell in a local coffee shop. So this will actually be my first in-person market that I'm vending. Because normally I sell to a coffee shop and they do the distribution for me. So I think it'll be fun though. I like that one. Also, should I make them sparkly? The sparkly ones are fun with like sparkly snow, but I don't know. I don't know that I'm feeling sparkly snow. All right. So we won't be adding sparkles today because they're a mess. My desk is actually still stained from doing some gift tags earlier this month, and I've been too lazy to clean it up. But I will do the sparkles outside tomorrow when the weather's supposed to be nice, when I don't have to worry about staining my desk. Because honestly, Sparkly snow is just fun. And they're all micas, not glitters, so they're slightly less harmful. I feel less bad about using them outside. I can show you what the sparkly ones look like. I just, the page has to be totally dry. And it's cold, because I keep saying I need to turn on the baseboard heater in the studio, and I keep not turning on the baseboard heat in the studio. So it's still cold down here, and so the paintings that I did this morning are still wet or still damp, and so I can't glitter those anyways. But I can show you once I'm done this row. I will pull the other ones that I've already done and glittered from a couple weeks ago. And I like it. It's just like, it's subtle, but it's fun. But I do need to, I keep saying I need to turn on the baseboard heating down here, and I keep forgetting. I'm gonna accept that it's a tree. Oh, now my brush is stained yellow. The funny thing is, I'm looking at the thermostat. I finished painting for the day, and I shut off all the lights in here, and I forget about it. I just, like, it slips my mind as, like, a task to do. It's like, oh yeah, you should, really turn on the heat so that you don't freeze. And it's not as bad today. It's slightly warmer today, and so it's not awful down here. And then it's going, really, I shouldn't turn it on yet because it's going to be warm the next couple days. But then we're going to be back below 0 in a couple days. So I'm going to leave it off for the next couple days. It's going back above 20. And then it's going to be back below 0. So I'm just going to have to survive it tonight. And then it'll be back warm. But honestly, I finished painting for the day and I forget. To be fair, I was wearing a plaid, but I realized as I was sitting down to paint a few hours ago that my plaid was white. It's white and blue, and that maybe that isn't what I wanted to wear to paint with watercolor. Though at some point somebody else will come downstairs when it's cold and go, why isn't the heat on down here? And then, the problem will fix itself. But let's grab one of the sparkly trees because they are really pretty. I just like don't want to do them on my desk inside. So here they are. And so normally I do this like bottom part as well. And here are mini trees, which I was going to turn into gift tags, but I might frame on cards. I don't know. We'll see. I think it depends on like where I am numbers wise. So I don't really. My big thing is I don't realize how cold I am. And so it's not normally until I'm done painting that I go, oh, I'm cold. I get so into what I'm doing that I just like sort of forget that being cold is a thing. Which isn't smart, but it happens. Don't love that line up there. I want to see if I can fix it. Yeah. That's Scarlet Mist. I love how mermaidy that color looks when it's on the palette and like settles out. Oh, why are we blending that much up? Can we not do that? Making my life so difficult. And the tree's like, you're making my life difficult. You got too wet. Well, that will be the edge that gets cut off. Because I lose, with this type of paper size, I lose one edge. So that'll be the edge I lose. Decision made. Oh, I love this color. This is going to be such a pretty combination. Oh, I like that tree. I don't like that blue tree next to it, but I like that tree. Oh, so how many? This will be number 3 to finish this sheet. We'll do one more after this. This is gray number 1. This is gray number 2. Question is, will I finish this sheet before dinner? I don't think so, but I have an hour. We'll see. To paint fast. Cool. Now we're back to green. So back to wetting the page. The nice thing about pre-wetting it all is that as long as I keep it wet, the water only really fills in that spot I've wet. Oh, this brush is so contaminated again. Well, this green is just going to be, no, it's not. It's so muddy. The reality is I've cleaned this brush twice today. It's just not staying clean, which is really annoying because I am trying to paint. Ooh, we just passed. It's always fun, or funny to me when I'm streaming and I finally pass the point where 100 people have at some point popped in to figure out what I'm doing. We just passed that point. I should have left it. I should have left it. bored. And other dangerous phrases when you're trying to get stuff done for Christmas product. My issue is that for Christmas stuff, it's always pretty repetitive year to year. Like, I might change up a couple things, but year to year, my Christmas launch is pretty similar. But because I hand paint everything I do, there's no way around spending hours and hours painting the same thing over and over again. So the only thing I can do is do fun things like this, where I do weird stuff with the color palette, because otherwise I get so bored so fast. That being said, I'm so bored. I have so many more to do, I think. The thing is, like, when we cut panels, I might discover that, like, I'm almost done card panels and I get to move on to gift tags, which are fun because it involves splattering paint and fun stuff like that. But I also might discover that, you know, I am not anywhere close to being done. And so it's always a gamble of, like, when is the right time to move onto product that sells for less, but I have more fun doing. Because as fun as this is, I'm getting bored. Oh, any good TV ads? I need a new recommendation for things to watch while doing monotonous studio stuff, because I've just finished another Simpsons rewatch. Tends to be my go-to for, like, background noise, because it's just like good background noise, but I need some new background noise recommendations. Currently, I'm using a playlist of every musical I've ever purchased on iTunes, which is a shocking number, but is also like a really weird playlist. I don't, unless you're confident in every choice of, like, album / musical you've made ever on iTunes, I would not recommend. But I've been buying musicals on iTunes since I was a very young teenager, and so it's quite an interesting mix, I would say. Yeah. You know, it's really interesting to see what musicals I bought when I was like 10 and 11 and 12 and go, oh, we were really, really into this. And say in my 20s, they're slightly less appealing. But it takes some of the fun out of it to exclude stuff that, like, you're no longer quite as into as you were in your earlier years. So instead, I just have them all on shuffle together. And so I'm sort of bouncing around like crazy with musicals. But I need new TV show suggestions, because I feel like I start something, and Mom's made the same comment, and then it gets canceled after a season. So I feel like I can't start anything on a streaming platform. But I don't watch that much live TV. Oh, this is a really pretty piece of paper towel. It's become all artsy. Sometimes I can do podcasts while I'm working. It depends on what I'm working on. For something like this, where I'm reading chat messages at the same time as I'm doing other stuff, I find podcasts too much. And so listening to sort of a stupid TV show like The Simpsons, or listening to soundtracks on shuffle works well. But for some things, like cleaning pens, I definitely put on a podcast. So it just depends on what I'm doing. I've been watching The Expanse. All right. I have to look that up because I have not heard of it. I have thought about starting The Diplomat because season 2 hasn't started and it's been renewed for a 3rd season, and so I am confident that it's going to get at least 3 seasons, and so I sort of feel like I can start it. But also with Netflix right now, you never know when a new season is going to come out. I used to love Little House on the Prairie. I used to watch it all the time. Because, like, sometimes you just need background noise. And it doesn't have to be smart background noise. Like, when it comes to stamping out the cards, because some of these cards will get, because they're being mounted on 3-inch by 4-inch cards, and these are going to be 2.5 by 3.5-inch panels. Some of them will get, the cards themselves will get stuff stamped onto them, just so that, you know, they're not just on a blank white card. And I'll definitely, you know, put on a podcast while doing that, because that's... Yeah, honestly, I'm probably too brain injury to, and not calling ADHD a brain injury, but like I have an actual diagnosed brain injury. Like I have too much of a brain injury to do to multitask on a TV show that I don't know well. I've just realized that I think, was it part of my tripod? It was. Ha! Sorry about that. You've got an hour and 5 minutes before I figured out that it was part of my tripod. That was the weird gray smudge. Like it has to be something that's like I don't have to pay attention to, but it also like has to just be background noise. Hence, I think I've seen The Simpsons, or according to my Disney Plus, I think The Simpsons has been rewatched 4 times since the beginning of 2020. So it's definitely time to switch it up. Because no one should have spent that much time watching or listening to The Simpsons. going from Mean Girls to Hamilton, which is currently what my laptop has shuffled my playlist to, is definitely a bit crazy. I think it was Mean Girls. Yeah, it wasn't Legally Blonde, so it was Mean Girls. This is a wonky tree. You know what? I should. I'm gonna have to actually... I'm gonna have to look up the Charlie Brown tree, but I should just throw one in. This really, like, sad, depressing Christmas tree is really what this thing needs. This paint is too wet. And I'm too lazy to fix it. I'm so tired of painting trees. It's such a slow process. Honestly, it's over 2 hours to paint a sheet. Alright, I actually like that one. Ah, that was the clean water. Now we've gone from Hamilton to Mamma Mia. Which again, weird. iTunes, you're having a time. I often feel like someday I want somebody to put the Bob Ross sound on YouTube so that I can use the Bob Ross Happy Little Trees for tiny trees one week. I really want to use Bob Ross Happy Little Trees for tiny trees. It would make me so happy. But I'm not a person that can pull that audio and then upload it to YouTube to do that myself. And so I just have to wait for some other artist to decide that, you know, they need that sound as well. That is actually the song that is currently playing in my headphones. Or headphone. Because I've got one out so that I know how loudly I'm talking. It's a crazy, because it includes every musical I've ever bought. It's a crazy playlist. Because it's like, what was I really interested in as a preteen? What was I really into as a teen? What was I really into during cancer when I was really depressed? So it's just this really interesting musical mix. Again, I like that tree. What's going on all of a sudden? And can it keep going on? It is. I find though that if I listen to musicals on shuffle like this, I end up with earworms less. When I listen to musicals in order of like their actual soundtracks, that's when I tend to end up with earworms. But when I do something like this, where I'm listening to a whole bunch of musical soundtracks out of order and doing something else, I don't tend to end up with earworms. Hematite mist. Oh, that's going to be a pretty color combination. It's going to be all muted. Hematite mist is really like actually a purple. I've put it in the reds because the pan itself looks red, but I always forget that it's a purple. It is very clearly like a purple. It could be argued that it's a purple brown, maybe, if I'm feeling generous. But I would call it a purple. Oh, now we're into Mary Poppins. Honestly, ABBA to Mary Poppins. So do I own any Sondheim other than Into the Woods? I don't know that I own any Sondheim other than Into the Woods. Because this is all stuff that I've purchased on iTunes. Because I don't have Spotify. So it's all things I've purchased the soundtrack to over the years. And I don't know that I've got Sondheim other than Into the Woods. That's a great question. Do I have Sondheim other than Into the Woods? I think the answer is I don't. Yeah, I don't have Sondheim other than Into the Woods, which is actually surprising because I really like... I can only think of what the movie's called. The documentary on it is called The Best Worst Thing That Ever Happened. Daniel Radcliffe was just in it on Broadway, and I can't think of what it's called. But as a teenager, I fell absolutely in love with the documentary on it because it was on Netflix. And I thought it was so cool. Not cool that it's the final musical that the two of them worked on, but so cool that it was Sondheim and I think it was Hal Prince. It was their final musical, but it was just so cool that it was the original tapes of it had been kept. And now Into the Woods is playing in my ears. It wasn't Sunday in the Park. It was best, worst thing that could ever happen is Merrily We Roll Along. But I also really like Company. And I really enjoy the soundtrack for the version of Company where people switched genders that premiered on West End first. I like that soundtrack quite a lot. Another soundtrack that I don't own. Sunday in the Park with George is such a fun soundtrack. Again, a soundtrack I don't own. I should own it, but for whatever reason, I don't own it yet. Really, what iTunes needs to do is just make a Sondheim collection that I can purchase, and it includes all of his stuff. Though I do love this version of Into the Woods best, which is the version that was, I think it was the Lincoln Center version, when they brought it back in 2022. And it was supposed to be like a 3-week run, and then it got a huge run on Broadway. And Neil Patrick Harris was in the original revival. He wasn't in the version that continued, but Pippa Sue, who was in Hamilton as one of the Schuyler sisters, I'm blanking on the one that marries him. Of course, I'm blanking on it right now. She played Cinderella. And Sarah Bareilles played the baker's wife. And it had a great female cast. It made me very happy. Because there had sort of been this whole run of musicals that had great male casts, but their female casts I was sort of less interested in. And then there was this amazing cast for Into the Woods. And I know every word to the intro of Into the Woods, and that is a nearly 12-minute song. Because I need better hobbies in life. Because, I instead have learned Into the Woods. Oh, this is going to be a very muted section and moody. That's fun. There's now a fly buzzing off the ceiling and hitting itself off the ceiling. Oh, the best worst thing to ever happen? Or the revival of Into the Woods. To be fair, both are insane, cast-wise. And I love both of them. All right. Oh, yeah. Well, because Disney did a version of it. I think it was Disney. And that cast is crazy. And then in 2022, one of the New York theaters that does, I believe it's the Kennedy Center, who does really short runs of musicals. I believe they're normally a week to 3 weeks. They did it Into the Woods. And it had an incredible cast. But people loved it so much that they actually took it back to Broadway. And so the Lincoln Center one had an absolutely spectacular cast. It had Neil Patrick Harris, it had Pippa Sue, it had Sarah Bareilles, it had, it had so many just fantastic people. The Disney one, though, is super fun, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it. I might actually watch it tonight because it's so much fun, and I have a whole bunch of adding links to videos to do tonight. And I can do that with a movie on in the background. And really, Into the Woods is so fabulous. Actually, I saw Into the Woods in theaters, like opening weekend it came out, with a whole group of friends. It was fun. Oh, we're back to Into the Woods. One more row done. Two rows left. Even just the soundtrack of Into the Woods is spectacular. It is one of the few soundtracks that I can listen to all the way through. It also has very like Once Upon a Time, or I guess Once Upon a Time has very Into the Woods vibes, where like everyone lives in the same world. I should watch Once Upon a Time again. There are lots of Disney movies I don't like, but I do think that Disney does a movie musical and a cast recording of a show. They were one of the first to do it really well with Newsies. So Disney has a great archive of... Yeah. Honestly, if you haven't seen Once Upon a Time, that show is crazy. Like, honestly, it's such a crazy show to watch. And the family tree for that show it's an adventure if you haven't seen Once. I think it's on Disney Plus or Disney Stars, which I guess are the same app, or at least in Canada they're the same app. But it's a good show. Where am I? I've done that, which means I'm here. Once was definitely the first show that I went, oh, like, you can have one, family trees can get really messy really fast, but oh, all the writers of that show, like, making everything intertwine was just magical. I don't know how we've dissolved into a TV and musical rant tonight, but honestly, it's basically any conversation with my friends. I think the one time I saw it, it just... Yeah, so you have to buy into it. You have to buy into the fact that, like, everyone... that they're building on the fact that Disney has managed to intertwine everything. And one, you've got to start at the beginning. It's not a show that you can pick up in any season other than season 1. And you've got to buy into the Disney lore that already exists, that every show is already related. Or, like, most of the Disney universe, like, there are Easter eggs where everything, like, fits together. If you don't sort of buy into that, like, Once does not, you're not going to enjoy it. If you can buy into it, on the other hand, Once is so much fun. And is probably my next TV show rewatch. Where are we with dark colors? We're here. That it is very over the top though. Like, it's just the people that, like, did spreadsheets so that you knew how everyone was related were fantastic. And I recently saw a video explaining the family tree of that show. And really, it's what convinced me that I probably needed to rewatch it again. I think the witch from what's it called? Into the Woods would get along really well with Beetlejuice, because that's what I'm listening to now. We're so close to being done. We're not really. But if I keep telling myself I'm close to being done, it's going to be more bearable. All right. Ooh. So these all get sold individually because it's hard to sell them as a set. I might sell, I probably won't. I had considered selling the Christmas ball ones as a set because they'll look more similar. And theoretically, if somebody wanted to special order a set of these in one colorway, like blues or pinks or purples or greens, I would do that. But overall, I'm not going to do, I don't think I'm going to do special orders for these this year for anyone other than family. Family's a different story where I always tend to do special orders for Christmas cards because mom will want a certain quantity, grandma will want some. And honestly, they just like want them before Christmas and it's pretty easy to do. But for other people, I don't know how many special orders I'll do because November's a busy month and I don't know that I'll feel like it. Yet these aren't cheap. I'll probably sell them for, they'll probably be $5 a card for trees, for 3x4. Gift tags, I haven't priced out gift tag sets. And I haven't priced out larger cards because I haven't actually done any yet. I've got a plan to do them, but they haven't actually gotten done. And because they haven't actually gotten done, I haven't figured out a price for them. My goal, though, is to keep prices standard because I want to only have to take exact cash. I don't want to have to deal with change. Where am I? What green was that? That was that blue. Means we're here. Ooh, back-to-back Hamilton. Cards are expensive though, especially, I don't know, mass printed cards are expensive. Like papyrus birthday cards at the drugstore are over $11 Canadian right now. So you could probably charge more. The thing is, I want to sell. And my fear is always that I'm going to raise my prices and not sell. And when you don't have a whole bunch of income, that isn't really an option. And so I'd rather keep my prices at a level that I make a profit, even if it isn't a huge profit, but I sell product. And maybe I'll reevaluate prices for next year. I think I'll probably reevaluate wholesale prices for next year. But I make an okay profit at $5 a card. So I'd rather sell them at $5 a card. And at least when I do painting streaming, like there's always some small amount of ad revenue. And that all helps. Plus the possibility of super chats. So everything adds up. I'm so bored. I've had 2 Hamilton songs back to back. It's not done a great shuffle. It's like a dozen plus musicals in this list. I should never get 2 of the same musical back to back. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So clearly I could probably raise my prices. But again, I'd rather sell. And the only way I sell is in person or a very small amount of wholesale. And so I'd rather keep, at least for now, at my prices at a level I know sell. So and again, by streaming, like at least that ad revenue adds up to, tends to be a couple dollars. For a 2-hour stream, it's probably like $2, but $2 over many, many weeks of streaming does add up, especially when I'm doing something like this where I'm streaming almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day, because I'm trying to get this project done. It all adds up. It is, especially because when I'm doing wholesale stuff, the stores take a cut. And so I have to make sure that whatever I sell at is something where I can make a profit, but at the end of the day, the store still can mark it up to a level where it will still sell in their business, with them making a profit. So what I could do was just sell at the same rate that it costs to buy my products when somebody buys my product in a store. That is an option that I haven't actually considered all that much. But I could, other than the fact that it would make the math weird, I could sell. I was trying to choose nice numbers that would like make adding up people's totals easy, but I could always choose weird math. We'll see what I choose. Hello. We are so close to being done this sheet, and hopefully this is the second last sheet of trees that I have to do this round. I'm sure that I'll end up doing another batch of these before Christmas, but I'd like this to be the second last sheet I have to do this round. That is true. Because I know what they sell for if you buy them in a store. I know what the vendors that buy them wholesale sell them for. I was just trying to keep the math sort of nice and easy, and an amount that if people were buying multiple cards, like the cash would be easy. But that is an option. Because honestly, I sort of feel like I'm underpaying myself, which is not a feeling I have a lot of the time when it comes to orders, but in this case, and it might just be because like I've produced all this stuff. It's been weeks and weeks of producing stuff and not getting paid because it's for one specific event. And so very clearly, like, I'm not going to get paid until the event, and only if stuff sells at the event. And I keep putting that caveat there because I know that these cards, like this was the best seller last year, were these tree cards. I don't know that they're going to sell this year. I'm taking a gamble that they're what's going to sell again this year. But you know what? Like, they might not sell. And that's always a risk that you take. So let's do this last row, and then I get to be done with these for today, because this will be my second full sheet of trees today. And so I've spent about 4 hours painting trees today, on top of filming Saturday's video and editing it, and editing a video that's going up tomorrow, late tonight. All right. It was a fun video to film. I'd never sat down with him before. We'd never actually talked more than via email. And so it was fun to speak with him about pens. It was filmed just before I left for Chicago for the Atlas Sidewalk sale, because I didn't know what backlog of content I'd have when I came back. And I was very glad I did that, because I've been still editing stuff like the Conklin video, where Conklin, I knew I was picking up those pens at Chicago, but I hadn't gotten around to editing the video, and they've been very nice about it, because most brands, once you get products from them, you have X amount of time to put out the video. And Conklin has been very nice about it, because I am still working my way through all the pens they gifted to me. I think I picked up 5 pens from Conklin. And I've got, do I have 3 of them in my current rotation? I think so. So you've seen some in inked videos already. And I've just like been having fun with them. But I was very glad that I filmed the Fig Boot interview before I left, because it would have been very hard to come back from the Atlas sidewalk sale and know that I had to film and edit that interview on top of all the other stuff I was editing, like the Atlas sidewalk sale 20 questions, where the final episode is coming out Friday. And in my opinion, it is, actually, I had quite a lot of fun with Marks that came out this week, or last week on Friday. This week's episode, though, is also one of my favorites. It was great. Also, thank you. I try and keep to a pretty consistent uploading schedule. That being said, I will not be sad to drop Friday uploads after this week. 4 uploads a week has been a lot. So I've yet to watch Craig's video on the Waterman restoration. Waterman film restoration. It sounds like a great... I was really excited to see it on Instagram, though, when he talked about it, because I do love a good vintage Waterman. So I'm excited to actually sit down and watch it. It's one of those things that I sort of have a stash of tabs open. Still, I think it's really interesting because I've got a 1947 Waterman. Was this the right color? Yes. And so I think it's fun to get to see it. Because I love a good vintage Waterman. I'd say I'm partial to a vintage Parker more, but I'd never say no to somebody handing me a vintage Waterman. I'm just very much a vintage Parker girl. I did almost buy a new vintage Parker a couple weeks ago at an estate sale. And I was so sad. It was a vintage Parker with a button filler. Which is like, if you know me, you know that I really want a button filler. The issue was I took a look at the nib and I wasn't convinced. And it went, because it was with an inkwell set, it went for more money than I was willing to spend on something that I wasn't sure actually would write or not. Because the hooded nibs, based on what friends have said, seem like more work to fix than a normal nib. So instead, I passed on it this time, but hopefully I get one at some point, because I'd really love one. It's like one of those grails that's like not really a grail, because I could totally live without it, but I also really like a button filler. Like they seem so cool, and I'd love an Esterbrook one, but I'd also be really happy with a vintage one. I have, how many vintage do I have? I said to somebody in a 20 question, somebody in their 20 questions this week went, vintage intimidates me. And I went, for somebody who owns as much vintage as I do, vintage still intimidates me, which is the truth. Like, I own not a huge amount of vintage, but I own 3 working Parkers. I own a working Waterman, and then I own a Shaver snorkel set, and then I own a pen that I don't know that YouTube ever saw, which is a Kaweco Sport from the 1960s, and 1 Parker, and then one other brand from around the same time period as my Waterman. Neither is in working condition currently. I would say it depends on the pen. With Parker 21s, totally, because they're not that much of a hassle, and the sacks are quite easy to replace yourself. Scott of 15 Pens, who's a Canadian, sells the parts to do it. It's not all that much work. Something more intricate like a lever filler would not be my first pick for an introduction to vintage, because they're not easy to fix and they are a hassle. And like, if something goes wrong, it goes really wrong. What color are you? Oh, I was right. I am here. Whereas a Parker 21 is like, with the sack filler, is not a big deal to switch out. And the nibs tend to be quite nice. I also like my 45. What I like about the 45 is that it was one of the first pens that you could just swap the nibs on. And so much like my Mark Twain, it's one of those like history pens that I just enjoy the background of. I don't know that I've ever actually inked it up in a monthly inking video, but maybe it'll be in an upcoming one. I think it was my, was it 2,000 subscriber? It was either 2,000 or 1,000 subscriber present. Might have been 1,000. And it was not in great shape. It took like several weeks of sitting in water, and I didn't think I was ever going to get the nib out of it. And then like one day the nib all of a sudden popped out, and I was quite happy. But for a while I was like, oh, I really liked the idea of this pen because you can get spare nibs for it. And then I like, whatever ink had been used in it had hardened like cement. But it's a lovely pen now. I would just like be selective about what. So as far as I know, my Parkers all still have their original sacks, but you want to be careful that you use non-acidic inks in them. So you don't want to be using Japanese inks in anything that has a sack. So stay away from things like, why can't I think of it? Pilot Iroshizuku, which is actually shockingly acidic. You want something more neutral. So the only thing that goes in my vintage sack fillers is Mont Blanc standard line, because it's considered to be safe for vintage, or Parker Quink, or there's no pH test for them. I use Ferris Wheel Press Madame Mulberry because I like the color. And again, you can buy spare parts for a Parker sack filler. So I only use it in my Parker sack filler. I don't use it in my Waterman, because if that Waterman gets a hole, that's a whole lot of drama to fix. I'm just more selective about what I put in the Waterman. Currently, the only thing that goes in the Waterman is Mont Blanc Cool Gray. What color are we on? I'm so lost. We're here. I would probably switch what ink I was using it, just because you don't want to use anything acidic in sacks. It will dissolve them. There's conflicting information about how quickly it dissolves them, but like it will over time eat away at the sack. And so it's sort of your own decision. And I have just made the decision not to risk it because for some of my pens, it would be a huge hassle to fix, and there's no guarantee that the fix wouldn't destroy the pen. And once I'm done this tree, I'm going to have to run because apparently it is dinner time here. If you look up pH of inks, somebody has a very informative blog on it where like they actually they use their equipment at work to pH test ink, which I'm not sure their boss was super happy about, but yeah, it gave us some very important information. Yeah, sounds about right for a Parker. All right. I'm gonna fix this tree just a little bit. And then I'm gonna run because it's dinner time here. So, thanks for hanging out tonight. It's been lovely. And I think we'll probably have at least one more of these because I still have trees to paint. So, thanks for watching.